Okay, guys, what's up? I want to do a quick video today. Um, this is going to be about your initial settings before you ever start flying using Litchi. This is common sense stuff. You had to go into your settings and set up your DJI Go app. You're going to have to do the same for other apps too. Okay? Common sense, people. So let's get into this. Go ahead and click your settings menu up here. Units, set that up to what you like. I'm just going to make this quick. Units to map auto zoom. That's all personal preference. Set that however you like. Map safe radius. The reason I have it set to 25,000 feet is whenever I go to run a waypoint mission, if I leave it at the default, I think it's 2,500 feet. If my waypoint missions goes beyond that, it'll throw up a warning message asking if I'm sure that I want to continue because the waypoint mission goes outside the map safe radius. I don't like running into unnecessary warning notifications. Go into camera, auto record starting at the top. I've got that turned off. I know how to use that red button on my screen whenever I'm flying. It's a big red button and it stands for record. Video format, that's up to whatever device you're running or video editing software. Anti-flicker. Um, you've got auto 60 hertz or 50 hertz. I think over here in the United States it's 60 hertz. Grid lines, I've got just the basic grid on mine. Let's go to aircraft. Okay. The very first one at the top. Go home altitude. This is the most important setting. I can't remember the default altitude, but I'll tell you what I run. I run 280 to 350 feet depending on my location. In case it has to go into return to home, or if you click return to home and you've got it set up at 100 feet and you've got some 120-foot tall trees around you, guess what? There's a good chance that it's going to make a beeline right into one of those trees on its way home. Maximum altitude, that's common sense, people. You need to follow the laws on that, follow the rules. Dynamic home point, that's a personal preference thing. If you turn that on, it turns your mobile device into the home point. If you leave it off, your home point is going to be the location where it took off. Signal loss behavior for manual flying comes defaulted at hover. That's what I want. Yeah, that's really what I want my drone to do, Litchi. Whenever it loses signal, is just sit there and hover. Why that's even an option, I don't know. Return to home is what you want that set up at. Common sense. So return to home. Your go home altitude is going to need to be set accordingly to your location. Calibrate compass. I can tell you right now, I have not calibrated within the past 50 flights. I've probably got close to 200 flights on my Phantom 3. I only calibrate if I travel a long distance and that thing's been bumping around in cars or planes or whatever. That's when I'll calibrate the compass if I'm going hundreds of miles away from where I usually fly. If you're one of those people who thinks you have to calibrate before every single flight, go ahead. Just don't come complaining to me that, they put you in the nut house in a straitjacket because you're outside dancing with a drone. Log flights, I think that's important. You need to have that turned on. That way, in case something does happen and, you get in trouble or, you're trying to file a warranty claim, you'll be able to prove the flight and what happened in the flight. Sync photo and video previews, I've got that turned off. And the reason being, I don't like to waste space on crappy quality footage on my device. Auto takeoff and follow mode, I've got that turned off. I can take off on my own, thank you. Maximum location accuracy, that's going to be how tight the GPS lock stays on your, or how tight the GPS lock is going to be on your Phantom. So let's say, for instance, you're flying in 15 to 20 mile an hour winds. It's going to fight a lot more to keep it within 20 feet of where it should be. Say if you're doing waypoint missions or flying in GPS mode. and say you're flying in GPS mode and you just let off the controls completely and it goes into a hover, it's going to fight against the wind harder to keep it within that 20-foot radius. Now that means that your battery life is going to go down a little especially if you're flying in super windy conditions, because it's going to be fighting that wind trying to keep its GPS locked. Gimbal mode, it's on free Inspired. That's just because I'm not connected. Whenever I do connect the Phantom, it goes into y'all follow. Gimbal extension, gimbal gesture control, use legacy pano, and front LEDs. That's more personal preference stuff. I've got my front LEDs turned off just to save battery. Let's go into speech. I've got speech turned on. Let's go to the very bottom. Warn if battery drops below 25%, self-explanatory. Warn if satellite count drops below 6 satellites. I like to know if my satellite count drops that low, especially if I'm running waypoint missions. Waypoints run off of GPS, so they need their GPS satellites. You need quite a few satellites to have an accurate waypoint mission. So let's run through it just real quick again. Units down to map auto zoom, that's personal preference. Map safe radius, that's going to be a personal preference, but again, I like to turn that up just so I don't run into any warning messages before. Camera auto record, I've got that turned off. I know when to press a red button. It's pretty easy. Video format, that's going to be dependent on whatever software / mobile device you're using. Anti-flicker, 60 Hz for US, 50 for everywhere else, or set to auto. Aircraft, the most important thing of this whole video, go home altitude. Set it high enough to clear any trees or any other obstacles in your area. Common sense, people. Maximum altitude, once again, common sense. Don't screw it up for the rest of us. Keep it under 400. Dynamic home point, that's up to you. You want to turn your device into the home point or leave your takeoff point as the home point. Signal loss behavior for manual flying. You don't want it to hover. That's the default. You want it to return to home. Calibrate compass. Once again, if you like dancing with your drone every time before a flight, dance away. Flight logs, I would recommend keeping that on. That way you'll have backup or evidence if anything does happen and you have to file a warranty claim, or if someone's claiming you're flying over their property or something like that, you can pull that up and show the authorities you indeed have not flown over someone's property. So we're going to do a POI mission. I mowed down here yesterday. We'll check that out. Let's go right there. And we'll look at the house. I'll go ahead and get our drawing tool. We'll start over here, come around the back, go up over here, and come back. The main thing you need to pay attention to is altitude here. The default altitude is 98 feet. Why in the heck Litchi sets that at 98 feet? I don't know. So I like to crank that up a little. Let's get into a little safer altitude here. Waypoint spacing, that'll be up to you. The lower that number is, the more waypoints you're going to have. The higher that number is, the less waypoints you're going to have. Speed, I set that to use cruising speed. Gimbal pitch mode is going to be focus POI. We'll click OK. Over here on the left hand side, click on mission settings. Heading mode is waypoint defined. You can do user controlled initial direction, but for a POI waypoint mission, if you want it 100% autonomous, you'd do waypoint defined. Finish action, I like it to go back to the first waypoint. That way, if I want to run the mission again, I can click the play button and it'll start all over again. Cruising speed, I've got that at 10.5. Maximum flight speed, I've got that all the way up. If I want to speed up the mission, I can just press forward on the right hand joystick. Gimbal pitch mode, we're going to do focus POI. That's going to keep them looking at the POIs. Rotations direction is going to be managed. All those parameters look good. We've got our little 4-minute long waypoint mission here. So what you need to do is go ahead and save that. Save as hope I don't crash. Absolutely. And let's run it and see what happens. First thing I like to do is check for cracks underneath my motor mounts on each arm before every flight. I don't see any. Looks good. Before every waypoint flight, I like to let it hover for a while, see how good it's maintaining position. That way I know how well it's going to stick to the flight path. So we're going to flip mode switch into function, waypoint, load, hope I don't crash, load, and we'll go ahead and start it. Click OK, yes.
Recording started.